but it is shortly after 10 o'clock on February 17th. And I will call to order the Peninsula Regional Transportation Organization's meeting for today. We do have a quorum present. I would like to just go over some procedural things because we have some new folks with us this morning. And I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of how we run our meetings. Right after our welcome, I will do an introduction. I will read your name or introduce you as I see you on my screen. You may want to wave a hand or something so that the general public knows who you are, because you may not be in the same order on everyone's screen. We do that so that the public knows who's in attendance. And then if you will do as Ben did a few moments ago, when you want to speak, if you would use the raise your hand feature in Zoom, that makes it much more efficient for me to recognize you for your input. The other thing that we do at this meeting is when we vote on motions, we use the unanimous consent procedure, so that when a motion is made and we're ready to vote on it, I will ask twice if there's anyone wishing to vote against the motion. If you do desire to vote in opposition to the motion, please let us know and we will do a roll call vote, because we need to be able to record how all of our members vote. And as you can see from the number of attendees this morning, all of them have access to be a panelist, but they do not all vote. So it's important that we record how each jurisdiction has voted. If there is no one wishing to vote in opposition to a motion, it will be approved with unanimous consent. So that's kind of how we run our meetings. Just wanted everyone to know so that the meetings flow fairly easily for us. So now I will start with our introductions, and today, because we do have some new folks, we will allow time after the introductions for our new folks to introduce themselves if they would like to give us a little bit of their background. And if they just want to say hi, fine. If they don't want to comment, that's fine too. And Mr. Cliff Hall, I've lost him on my, there he is, I've lost him on our screen now. He's been an integral part of this organization. I'm not sure how many years, but I know more than 8, because that's how long I've been involved. And he will be retiring at the end of the month, and we will give him an opportunity to introduce his replacement. So that's how this morning is going to go. So I'm going to start with the introductions. When I look at my screen, excuse me, the first person I see is Sarah Black. And Sarah is the RTPO coordinator. I next see myself. I'm Becca Ashby. I represent the city of Port Orchard, and I am chair of the RPTO. I next see Michael Bateman, who is with the city of Paulsbo. I see Ed Covello, who is with Kitsap Transit, who is it's also an RPTO coordinator. I then see David Fort, who represents Kitsap County. Mike French is a New Clallam County Commissioner, and this is his first meeting. Ben Thompson is City Council of Port Townsend. Nicole Gauthier is I'm going to get your title wrong, and I apologize to everyone whose titles I get incorrectly. I call Nicole the Executive Director of Jefferson Transit, but maybe she's the General Manager. And then we have Leslie Snyder, who is a City Council person with Bainbridge Island. Wendy Clark-Getson represents the Jamestown Sklallam tribe. Lindsay Warren-Schwarren is with the Port Angeles City Council and is the RTPO secretary. And next we have the infamous city council member from Paulsbo, Mr. Ed Stern. And then we have Kitsap Transit's Executive Director, John Clausen. And the next person is new to me, and it's Arnie Bacher, from Port of Bremerton, and I will let Gary introduce you a little later, Arnie, okay? And then we have Ted Jackson from the Port of Allen. We have Cliff Hall with the Washington State Department of Transportation, Gary Anderson with the Port of Bremerton. Ryan Clemens is Cliff's replacement, and Cliff will introduce him appropriately, and he is not related to Debbie. That means something to all of the old folks here. And then we have Olympic Region's Regional Administrator, Steve Rourke, who is our main presenter today and is why we have a full house today. Then we have Mayor Becky Erickson from the city of Paulsbo. She's a guest today. Thanks for being here, Becky. And then we have Ashley. I'm sorry, I can't read Ashley's last name on my screen, but she is with the Department of Transportation also. Chris Hartman is with the Port of Port Angeles. Rachel Anderson is a city council person with the city of Sequim. Miranda Nash is with Jefferson Transit, who is our fiscal agent. Randy Netherland is a county commissioner with Mason County and is our vice chair. Vicki Grover is with the city of Bremerton. Brandon Meyer is here representing Clallam Transit, and he is also a Port Angeles City Council person. And Paul Hampton is with the city of Forks. I believe I got everyone. And if I mispronounced anyone's name, I do apologize for that. I will do better next time. And with that, I will start with you, Cliff. And would you like to introduce Ryan to all of us?
Yeah, thanks, Beck. First of all, gosh, it's been 8 years. Man, where's the time go? But I just want to say before I introduce you, it's been great working with all you folks. And you really put together a great organization, and it's a joy to watch you soar with not a lot of resources for that matter, but you've done good. And it's been great working with you, Beck. So with that, as you guys probably all know, or most of you, I'm the regional coordinator from the WashDOT Transportation, or Tribal and Regional Integrated Planning Office. And we manage the MPO and RTPO programs for the state. All the pass-through funds, we pay the invoices, and we help you with technical issues. As opposed to the region, which are your boots on the ground with the actual projects and TIP development and plan development, et cetera, et cetera. And with that, as Beck said, my last day is the 28th, and we've hired a replacement, Mr. Ryan Clemens, who I'm going to just turn it over to now and let him introduce himself, give him a little bit of background, Ryan, and where you come from, and go, take it away.
Sure. Well, it's nice to be here with you all this morning. I'm Ryan Clemens. I'll be taking over for Cliff. Congratulations, Cliff, by the way. I don't know how I'll really be able to fill all of Cliff's shoes, but I will strive to do so. I come all the way from managing an MPO out of Bloomington, Indiana. I love all sorts of parks and recreation jokes. So if you have any, I've probably heard of them, but I will gladly take some more. But yeah, so my background is in transportation planning, MPOs, landscape architecture, environmental science. And I'm excited to learn more about the state and your region as well. So thanks for having me aboard, and I look forward to working with you all along the way.
Thank you, Ryan. And for those of you who are new, when we started, or for many years, the backbone of the Peninsula RTPO was Olympic Region DOT. They were our lead planning agency. And Debbie Clemens was integral in that. So was Dennis and Cliff, and they're all gone now. And that's just moving forward. But let me tell you, the organization wouldn't be what it is today without the foundation that those three people laid for us. Their work and support has been invaluable. Cliff, can't thank you enough and wish you much happiness and fun and just enjoy.
I will. Thank you, Beck.
Thank you. And I will then ask, because we've had just a brief conversation, Mr. French, would you like to just give us a little bit of who you are since you're new to us?
Sure. Hi, I'm Mike French. I'm a newly elected county commissioner from Clallam County up in Port Angeles. I was previously a city council member of Port Angeles for 5 years, but I never had really any interaction with the RPTO as we assigned, I think, Lindsay, who is here, to that. So I worked with Lindsay for 5 years or so on the Port Angeles City Council. Before that, I was a restaurant owner in downtown Port Angeles for about 15 years in the private sector. My first interaction with transportation planning really was when I got elected to the city council, and I came across a sustainable design assessment that the American Institute of Architects had done on the city of Port Angeles, where they had criticized many of our planning and transportation policies over the last 40 years or so. And that led me into a hole where I just, learned a whole bunch about transportation policy and transit policy and planning and urbanism and everything, and became really interested in the subject. So, and now a couple of years later, here I am as a county commissioner, and I'm on the board, and I'm really excited to contribute.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here. And I am not familiar with Arnie. Gary, did you want to introduce him?
Sure. So Arne Bacher is a member of our staff at the Port, a valuable member that actually contributes greatly to helping it run like a well-oiled machine out there. And he's got a wealth of experience in commercial business, leasing, and development. And I'd probably let him describe a little bit more about his background, but I'm happy that Arne is here at this meeting and just to observe, and maybe he's got a few comments to make. I'm not sure, but he recognizes the importance of the PRTPO from our perspective, and so Arne, why don't you just say a little bit about yourself?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, Gary's right. I do recognize the importance of what PRTPO does. My background is in hospitality development more than anything else. Some of you may know me. I used to run the Kitsap Conference Center for a couple of years before I came over to the port, and now I'm the COO here at the port, coming from the Director of Business Development position and bringing in new companies and also putting up some new buildings here. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. We appreciate all of your attendance, and we hope that the organization provides value, and that we provide value to you. I believe that's all the new folks. With that, we will move on down our agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Mr. Stern.
Madam Chair, I will move so, but for good of the order, I will note, and this isn't on the agenda, some of our guests are here because of the sudden action required on a federal raise grant that affects municipal corporations, city and county, from Bainbridge Island to Forks, and every point in between came up suddenly, and probably is deserving of a quick conversation here as you see fit, Madam Chair. With that, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
May we amend the agenda and put the item you mentioned after our transportation alternative strategy?
I would appreciate that, Madam Chair,
Okay.
and I amend my motion to include that.
Thank you.
I'd like to second the approval of the agenda.
Thank you. There is a motion on the floor to approve the agenda as amended. Is there anyone who would be voting in opposition to that motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting in opposition to that motion? Seeing none, the motion is approved with unanimous consent. And then we would want to have a motion to approve our consent calendar, which involves the minutes from our last meeting and our quarterly invoice approval, our second quarter invoice approval. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Mr. Clausen, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Well, I would be happy to offer it, but since I wasn't in attendance on the 16th, I
Okay,
didn't think it would be appropriate.
okay.
I'll approve the consent calendar. I was present and I also reviewed the invoicing as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Is there a second?
Chair, I'll second.
Thank you, Randy. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Is there anyone who would be voting in opposition to that? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting in opposition? Ed, did you need to speak before we finish the vote?
I'm sorry, Steve Gray is there. Steve Gray is waiting. I can't bring him into the meeting. Sorry.
Okay, well, they take care of that technical thing. Hearing that no one was voting in opposition to our consent calendar, it is approved with unanimous consent. Moving on down our agenda, our first action item is a end of biennium funding request. Thera, are you able to take that? Or are you working on, oh, Steve's in now. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Thera.
Sorry about that. Yes, and there's Steve. Okay. Yes, so this first item is to take advantage. I think most of you know, all of you probably, that we operate on a biennium basis. We're coming into the last few months of state fiscal year 2023. And as happens with so many state offices at the end of the biennium, WSDOT is looking to make sure that none of the RTPO planning funds that are available go wasted. And so they have put out, in fact, the information came out just a couple of days ago. So after this agenda packet went out, WSDOT has put out sort of a request for funding proposals for work that could be completed between now and the end of June, or work that could be expended between now and the end of June to use these funds. And so in talking with the executive committee, we identified a couple of things that would be advantageous for PRTPO that would support our work program, that's fully supportive of the UPWP and the work that not only that we're wrapping up this year, but that, as we'll talk later in the agenda, that we are perhaps going to be pursuing in the next biennium. And so those two things, the primary piece of that would be to get funding to extend our GIS services contract one more year. Our contract expires in March. We are using it, as you will hear a little bit later, we're using that extensively. We see great value in building a data portal, specific to the Peninsula region. And this is a really tremendous opportunity to get funding to extend that contract for one more year to provide support, not just for the work that we're doing right now for PRTPO, but also going forwards if we are going to update the regional transportation plan, as we'll discuss later. So that's the bulk of it. About 3,400 or so would also be to support sort of our additional cost. Just when we put our budget together 2 years ago, we slightly underestimated some things. So about $3,400 would be used to backfill so that we could complete the work that was laid out for you all in December with rural transit and sort of this demographic platform to support equity analysis and all. So that's what it is. This would be asking WSDOT for $21,110 of additional supplemental RTPO funding to do those two activities, both of which would be fully expended by the end of June. And I am coming to you today to, because the board is responsible for the budget and the work program, to ask your approval for pursuing that funding. Is assuming you give that approval and we pursue it and are successful, I would then come back to you in April and ask you to amend that additional money and task elements into the existing UPWP. So happy to answer any questions about the specific work or the mechanism for doing it. But other than that, I would turn it over to you for your action, please.
The other thing that I'm just going to add, because I'm very supportive of this, I'm very supportive of the work we have done with the GIS system. You see it in our RTIP, you see it in the Human Services Transportation Plan, and it will be even more robust if the board agrees to move forward updating our regional transportation plan. But the ask this morning not only is to approve the request to ask for the $21,000, but also to give permission for me to sign an agreement if that needs to be executed prior to our meeting in April. So that's what's on the table today. Cliff?
Yes, I'm trying to learn how to work this thing. So how do I shut this off? Oh, here we go, lower hand. I'm reading this and I'm going, well, you want to extend your contract for a year. So how are you going to spend the money by June 30th?
It's a service contract. It's like a service contract, like a software agreement. So we pay for it all at one time. We purchase 100 hours of service, and some contracts are things that you bill out over time, and others are lump sum payments, and this is a lump sum payment.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that before you go any further that will be spent by June 30th, because
yeah, understood.
That's the key.
Understood totally.
Wendy.
Thanks, Beck. I just wanted to reiterate what Vera just said. When I read this in our agenda, I thought it was brilliant to be able to have no risk involved in meeting that June 30th deadline. And I think it's a really tremendous way to build a robust GIS system just in its infancy, and be able to experience it as a tool for planning, especially when we are looking ahead on the horizon and seeing the RTP update.
We would entertain a motion to approve submitting a application for $21,100 and to allow the chair to execute the agreement if we have a successful award. Is there anyone who would like to make that motion?
I would so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ted. And now, is there any additional discussion on the motion? Is there anyone who would be choosing? We have a motion and a second to authorize the RTPO to submit a request for $21,100 specifically for the AWC's GIS contract, and also to execute an agreement if we have a successful award. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? Hearing none, the motion passes with unanimous consent. And now, just brief before we move on to our next one. And we had a couple of people join us, which would be Steve Gray, who is with Clallam County, and Kate Dean, who is a Jefferson County Commissioner. Thank you both for attending. Moving on down our agenda, we have an update on the federal funding SWAP pilot program. Sarah, are you taking that, or is
I'm taking that, and I'm sorry, I was just checking to see. I've been playing tag with Axel Swanson at, I was just checking to see if I had any current thing in my email. So This is just a brief update on a pilot program that's working its way through the legislature right now to allow rural counties responsible for administering their own Surface Transportation Block Group STBG funding programs to swap those funds, those federal funds, for state funds. And most of you have heard a lot of this discussion over the last couple of years about the importance of this, the importance of not federalizing really small projects, because if you put less than $500,000 on a project, there's a certain level of effort that comes with the administrative requirements, and at a certain point, it's just inefficient. It's a inefficient way of delivering local projects, and sometimes local agencies have priority needs that are not on the federal highway system, and they can't do those priority needs with federal funds. So PRTPO has advocated for several years for increased flexibility in how these federal funds are managed by local agencies that are dealing with these small pots of money in their allocation processes. There's a pilot program going forward this year that aligned with PRTPO's legislative priority. And the current status of it now, they're working, and in fact, our WashDOT partners at the table may have some more current information than I do. A group of associations are working together with WashDOT, so local programs, Association of Washington Counties Engineers. I think AWC is also taking a look at this again for the small cities and rural areas. And they're trying to work through the details of it. They want to honor and recognize, leave intact the programs. You know, they're not saying each agency's going to change how they do it. They're working out the mechanisms by which municipalities would be able to exchange those funds, not required. So as it came up in the TAC discussion, tribes may be very comfortable working with small pots of federal money because of the mechanisms by which they obligate and administer their funds, which are different than for the municipalities. So they're working out those nitty-gritty details now, looking like this is going to go forwards. All rural counties, again, not our urban counties, so this would not apply to Kitsap County or to municipalities that are within a metropolitan planning organization. That's not what PRTPO is. So this would be just for those rural counties. And again, it has nothing to do with the RTPO itself. PRTPO has no real say in this at all, but it is one of those examples of how there was a lot of local interest in this, and PRTPO policymakers sort of leaned into this. And this is just to keep you apprised of that as it moves forward. It's looking like it's going to go through, and then hopefully probably by the end of today I will have the latest update on that. So
okay, David.
Oh, yeah, is this a separate bill action from the transportation bill that has a paragraph in it about a $25 million program but does not specifically reference rural?
Yeah, I don't know about that, doesn't specifically reference rural, but it's got like 25 million. A question that I have is, that's good for maybe 1 year. They've got there are lots of questions still. That's why I was kind of hoping to get an update. They owe a report to the legislature by December of 2024 about how the program is working. So timing wise, it's really tight. It seems like you'd have to have a project already in the STIP and flip those funds, but those are the kind of details, David. But yes, it's got $25 million associated with it. And what Axel told me is they're going to let all the rural counties participate. I'm not aware of a metropolitan.
Also, if you could remind me who they are. I mean, who's this group working? I mean, I missed.
Well, there's local programs is working. So Washington State Association of County Engineers has been championing this for years. So they're sort of, I think, probably the lead at the local agency level, but also cities are interested in as well. So places like Forks or Port Angeles that, you know, might be interested. So it's the associations that are working on that. What we briefed the TAC on this in January, and then they raised some questions. And so again, I sent those on to Axel. What we had left it at is the entities that are working out the nuts and bolts details of it. Axel said that they may want to bring them all together into a working session. And so we just offered, you know, we can help get the word out to our local partners about that.
To move this discussion on, David, we can't define to you how the sausage is being made, okay? But it's being made by associations, DOT, and some other organizations. And Kate, I'll get to you in a minute. What we did learn, I listened to a Senate Transportation Committee meeting, and at that point, it became apparent to me that our 3 rural counties had asked to be part of the pilot program. And it became apparent to me at that point that any county that wishes to be part of the pilot program will be invited to do so. Kate.
Yeah, I can just provide a little more info. I've spent the last 2 days with Axel down in Olympia. Just a couple of things that haven't been mentioned. One is that the $25 million is in the governor's proposed budget. So that's good that we have support there. And the other is that the current administration fee that they're talking about a 90% swap. So there would be some admin lost. That is, you know, I think higher than most of us would like, but lower than what WashDOT might like. So a bit of a compromise there, but it's looking really positive. It is one of the 4 priorities of the Association of Counties, which also represents county engineers. So a lot of horsepower behind it. And everything I heard as of yesterday, late afternoon, was it's going really well. And I will say PRTPO is one of the first to really bring that issue to the fore. And it's been really great. Like, all of our legislators already knew about and understood because of the work that we have done. So kudos to us for continuing to daylight that issue.
Thank you. And we will keep our board apprised as we get, if we get definitive information, we will keep you apprised between meetings. So with that, our guest of honor today is going to give a presentation. And again, I will introduce the Olympic Region's Regional Administration Stater, Steve Rourke. And I know that DOT comes to us every February and gives us an idea of what's going to be happening in the region over the next year. And so, Steve, I will just turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much. And can you hear me okay? And can you see my slide deck? All right, I'm seeing some nods there. So first thing, good morning. Pleasure to be here. I'm joined by Ashley Carl from our planning office. And we're much more interested in answering questions and having some dialogue than listening to me speak. But I prepared a whole bunch of information. We've got more content to talk about than I think we have time today. So I've taken the liberty of pulling out the things we think will be of the most interest. So appreciate the opportunity to be here. Looking forward to supporting all the work being done, great work being done by the organization. Really value our partnership. So I'm just going to dive right in, and feel free to stop me if you have any questions. Be happy to pause and answer questions. So let's dive in. I like to start with this slide. It's kind of who we are here in Olympic Region, and if you can see that, 2 things jump out at me. Number one, we have a lot of assets that we manage here in Olympic Region, 3,000 lane miles, we got 650 bridges, and the list goes on. We also have a lot of partners shown there, lots of cities, 7 counties, and more importantly, probably 1.8 million customers who want and need the transportation system to work for them. And all the little triangles on this dot are our various maintenance offices and engineering offices around the region. All right, this is our construction map for 2023. I wanted to show this real quickly, not that we're going to dive into it in a whole lot of detail, but there's a lot going on. And I hope that jumps out at you when you see this map. Next year's map is going to look a lot like this as well. We've got a couple of very busy construction seasons coming at us. And one of the things we recently pushed out is the concept. This is a flyer. I dropped it in the chat, so hopefully you can access this. I don't expect you to be able to read that slide, but it has a couple of interesting maps on here. One is our 2023 season on the north end, and the following slide, which I'll put up in a minute, has our tentative 2024 construction. And the reason we're putting huge emphasis in this year is we have an unprecedented amount of construction going on in the north end. And it, it pivots around 101 Hood Canal Bridge. There's really one way in and off the north end. And so that is not lost on us. And at the same time, we need to get the work done. And I think we all know that everybody loves what we do in construction when it's done, not while it's going on. So I just wanted to put that out there. This flyer is in the chat, and please reference that. I also put a link in the chat to our online open house, which mirrors a lot of the information in that flyer. That online open house, we're going to be promoting that as the best source to get up-to-date information on everything going on in the North Peninsula. All right, I wanted to start with Hood Canal Bridge. It is arguably the most impactful project we have this summer, and so I wanted to highlight that. This is a great shot of the bridge. This is the world's largest floating bridge in saltwater, and it's a bridge that requires ongoing maintenance to keep it in a state of good repair. And it lives in a harsh saltwater environment. And I'll just be blunt, things rot on this bridge quickly, and we are constantly replacing parts and pieces to keep it in good working order. And as many of you probably know, we are obligated to open by federal regulation, by Coast Guard regulations. We have to open for marine traffic. And what we're working on this summer is inside that yellow box on the screen. They're called the center locks. So this bridge has the capability of opening 600 feet to let various marine vessels through. And what holds the bridge together, and it's frankly the weak point on the bridge. If you can imagine an old school briefcase that has two clasps on it, our bridge is very similar, a little more robust, but we have two center locks that hold the draw spans together when the bridge is open to vehicular traffic. They've served us well, but they're wore out. They are the only part of the bridge that resists lateral strain. So tidal action, heavy winds, and just years of sitting in salt water, it's reached the end of its life. So we need to replace it. This is what a center lock looks like. This is one of the two that are on the ends of the draw spans. You've got a pyramid section, and that section comes through the square opening, and a giant hydraulic latch latches the bridge together. So we've got to take all of this out and replace it. And the plan right now is to do that over 4 weekends this summer. Now, originally we had planned to do this work in the late May, June timeframe. And back in October, I went up and visited with the Olympic Tourism Commission, and they suggested that was not a great idea, given all the events and festivals. So right now we've taken this list of, this isn't a complete list, but it's a fairly comprehensive list of the events going on. Right now we're targeting late July into mid to late August for these 4 weekend closures. And that has created, when we moved it to satisfy one group and you move it to a different time frame, it brings another group to the forefront that says this is a bad time as well. The challenge is there is no good time. And we have to do this work between the months of late May through September 30th. And that's not by our choice, although that we agree with it. It has to be done in good weather, good tides. But we also have a Blue Ribbon Commission that has basically ordered us. That is the time frame you need to be working on this bridge. So we are looking for opportunities during these 4 weekend closures to open the bridge to traffic at predetermined times, if you will, to flush traffic through at periodic intervals. We haven't determined when those are yet, and we're getting a lot of feedback on when those should be. And I'm afraid at some point we've got to lock in the days and the times we'll be willing to open the bridge to traffic and still get the work done. So we've got some work ahead of us. It's going to be a challenging 4-week period to get this done, but we're confident we can get it done, and we're working hard with the community to stay informed. And that's our biggest push is please stay informed, plan ahead. We're hoping folks can arrive early, maybe leave late if they have the flexibility to do so. So that is that's the biggest project we have on the peninsula in terms of impacts, in my opinion. Oops, went too far. All right, going out west to the Elwha Bridge, we awarded this contract last week. We will begin work this summer to replace the Elwha Bridge. You see a design visualization there. The new bridge will be built downstream of the existing bridge. The curve there at Olympic Hot Springs Road will be flattened. It'll be a much more safer and a more gentle curve for motorists to use. The new bridge will be 40 feet wide, 12-foot lanes, 8-foot shoulders, which is a big improvement over the old bridge, which you see in the bottom of that photo. That bridge served us very well. So I think it opened in 1913. So I think we've got our money's worth out of it. And this is just a shot showing the intersection there at Olympic Hot Springs Road. There will be a parking area for recreational use. We're planning that into the project. So project will wrap up next year. So. All right, I'm just going to make a kind of a bounce all over the place here with other improvements we have going on this summer. Another project, this will be going on all summer. It's going to open this fall, is the roundabout at Paradise Bay Road. And I have just a visualization of what that looks like. What makes this roundabout unique is it will be a metered roundabout. And so if you think of an on-ramp in an urban area where it's ramp metered, similar concept here. The mainline traffic, so the 104 traffic, whether you're coming down the hill or getting across the bridge, it will be metered when we have openings of the Hood Canal Bridge to allow. So the reason for that is to create gaps for Paradise Road and Shine Road to get into the roundabout. So it will only be metered when we have queuing from the Hood Canal Bridge. And then going up the hill at the same time, in fact, these two roundabouts are in the same contract. The intersection at 104 and 19, that roundabout will be constructed and open this fall. We will need to do a detour. It doesn't show it on this slide, but a detour on Center Road for a few days while we do the tie-in at this location. Other than that, it'll be typical kind of construction-related impacts. All right, moving over to Port Orchard, we have the roundabout there at Bay and Bethel. This one pretty straightforward. It's this year's construction. Moving folks around while we stage construct it will be the impacts. All right, I want to move to our fish barrier program, which a lot of the dots you saw on the map earlier are fish barrier. We have a massive fish barrier program. So within that blue shaded area, that is what we refer to as the injunction area. WSDOT is under a federal injunction to restore 90% of the habitat within that location by 2030. That represents about 400 plus or minus culverts that need to be replaced, culverts that are barriers. In our region here, we have 207 of those. And the majority of those are on Highway 101 and as you travel around the peninsula. So the first up, we've already, this slide, I should have updated it, but the graphics didn't have time to do it. So we had six fish barriers you see there on the screen. They're listed from left to right at Johnson Creek over to Contractors Creek. Given the sheer amount of construction we have, we are deferring some of this work. So the only project that'll be under construction this summer will be Eagle Creek, which if you can see my cursor is right in the middle. And it's the only one of these projects that isn't a bridge. It's a three-sided structure. And we are advancing a strategy to make this high impact, short duration, get in, get out. The challenge with that is we are planning in the month of August. We haven't identified the exact time yet, but there will be 5 days when US 101 will be alternating one-way traffic. And we are expecting significant backups as a result of that. We're also planning a robust outreach campaign so that we can get diversion. Locals can get around it, but there won't be a signed detour associated with it. The other projects you see there will start this fall. And so next summer is when the fun construction impacts will start. Those will not have high impact. We will build what we call a shoe fly. So we'll maintain one lane in each direction on US 101, just on a kind of a side alignment as we build the new bridges. Moving down to south of 104 here at Leland Creek. Leland Creek is a bridge. The north and south tributaries are three-sided structures. So our decision here is when we construct the 3-sided structures, we'll do that under a detour. And we think this detour is going to be starting in late July. We haven't pinned it down yet, but we'll put out notice when that occurs. And the detour will be via Center Road. These jobs will wrap up next year. And then 2 more, one at Shine Creek and another up at Swanson Creek. The Shine Creek will maintain 1 lane in each direction. Swanson Creek, likewise, we will have a 10-day closure here and a detour while we do the tie-ins at that location. And then moving down into Mason County, we have the first 4. So the 4 you see, this one, and these 2 will be under construction this year. We've decided to defer Camilchi and the Griggs tributary to next year. The impact here is we're planning to close SR 108 and detour folks around on SR 8 while we construct these. 2-week closures to get this done. So 2 of them will be done during 1 2-week period, and then the other 2 will be done in another 2-week period this summer. And we have to do this work during a fish window, so that'll be starting late July. Those 2-week closures will occur between July and September 30. And then I wanted to just bring this one to everybody's attention. These are, we refer to this as the Coastal 29. We have a bundle of fish barrier projects. We've tried to get in and get out and disrupt traffic as little as possible and in geographic areas. So these projects will be done in segments. The north end will go first, then we're going to do the south end. This work will get underway. They'll get underway this year, but the real impacts won't occur till next year. But this kind of gives you a sense of just how many of these we need to do. And then this is a future one. I put this one on here because it's high impact, and it's one that we're working with the city on. We have 3 fish barriers we need to correct. And I'll start with Tumwater Creek. We're going to be closing that segment of 101 for 9 months and detouring people through town and up the SR 117 truck route. So that'll be a 9-month duration to build that. And the reason for that is the barrier is located in a very deep embankment section. And then we have the 2 Enos and Lee Creek right in as you come into town. We are planning 2 periods of, how do I explain this? There'll be 2-week periods of time. We'll have 4 2-week periods of time where we're going to be having US 101 down to 1 lane in each direction. We haven't dialed in the exact time frame, but this will be very impactful from a congestion standpoint. And again, we're working with the city to figure out how we're going to approach this. But that is the plan at Lee and Enos Creek. And then I want to turn to future investments we have. I didn't put them all in here. I grabbed the ones that I thought would be top of mind. The SR3 freight corridor. Currently, this project in the governor's budget was pushed out a couple biennia. And so right now, we are still executing what we call the current law budget. We have not stopped working on this project, but we will need to bring it to a logical conclusion if, in fact, the legislature funds it as shown in the governor's budget. I know there's conversations about advancing the funding back to where it was, but right now it's a little in. We're trying to determine what the next steps are on the freight corridor. Right now, the earliest advertisement date for construction would be early 26. Then I wanted to move up to Simdars. I have 2 graphics here. This shows the completion of the Simdars interchange up by Squim. And it part of the planning study work, also the companion piece to completing the interchange is to build the frontage road down to Palo Alto Road and Happy Valley. You know, from WashDOT's perspective, this is great. These are 2 high accident locations on US 101, and the best way to take care of an intersection is not to not have one from a safety standpoint. So this certainly helps in that respect. This project is also it's part of the Move Ahead Washington package, and I was going to look at the timing on this one. It is out in 3133, the Move Ahead Washington funding. And what's interesting about the Move Ahead Washington funding is when it came out last session, there were no timeframes associated with the funding. So the legislature right now is wrestling with which projects get funded first. And so currently, what I'm seeing in the governor's proposal is a 31 start date. Then I want to talk just briefly about Gorst. Move Ahead Washington had roughly $75 million for Gorst, and we have the benefit here of a planning study that was completed not that long ago that identified short, medium, and long-term solutions for the Gorst area. And the funding for this one is also out 3 biennia at least. So no work imminent right now if in fact the legislature adopts the governor's budget. I would add that we have a fish barrier right here at Sam Christopherson, and one of the improvements at Sam Christopherson was a roundabout, and we have made the decision that as part of the fish passage project, the culvert goes diagonally through the intersection. We've made the decision that to go ahead and build the roundabout when we do the fish passage job, so that's going to be a nice improvement for that area. And then I wanted to just turn to a couple policy things for us all to be thinking about, you as planning organization and us in WashDOT and our partnership together. Complete Streets became a requirement for WashDOT on all projects over $500,000, which in our world here at WashDOT, that's just about every project that we have. So Complete Streets is, we are identifying projects where Complete Streets would apply. And it's roughly half of our projects. We've screened here in Olympic Region about 118 projects that we think Complete Streets will apply to. And so we're pretty excited about the program. The only challenge that we see with it is, for example, if you have a paving project, the preservation of that pavement, we may need to say, okay, do we need to pave it first and then do the Complete Street enhancement later? Or can we wait and get it all, or can we do it up front and get it all designed and agreed to before we need to go out and pave our roadways? So there's a few challenges with it, but we're sorting through those. And there's opportunities here as well as we come through communities. We're going to be very in tune with local comprehensive plans, filling in gaps with trail systems. So more to come on our Complete Streets program, but we are actively identifying projects where it will apply. And then I wanted to talk about resiliency just real quick. I know that you're all thinking about updating your plan. We're certainly, as an agency, talking more about resiliency, making sure that we can adapt and withstand major events like earthquakes and cyber attacks and flooding and all that. And you're going to hear us talk more about a safe system, a sound system, and a smart system. And what we mean by that, if you think about safety, I think we all know the safety numbers, the number of crashes, the number of fatalities are all up on our system, and probably the local systems as well. So how we get better through design, how we operate our system, and education is going to be important to make our system safer. And from a sound standpoint, that means to us, that's about taking care of the assets we have and keeping them in a state of good repair and prepare for threats to the system. And then being smart about how we manage the system, squeezing all of the capacity out of an asset we already have before we build new things. And that means prioritizing travel options, right? Transit and biking and walking to improve accessibility. It also, for us, means collaborating more on land use and transportation, that connection there. I mean, in WashDOT, we don't control land use decisions, but certainly transportation is affected by land use decisions. And it's also about building on some of our ITS and TSMO successes. And then lastly, I'm going to wrap up here so that we can have some conversation. It's not lost on us. We've got some geologically unstable areas, particularly in Clallam County, but also in Jefferson and Mason, where we experience slides. This is an older graphic, but it kind of just shows you some of the areas that are on our radar. We actually fixed Jim Creek last year and the Clallam Bay slide you see on these photos. And of note, the governor's budget has roughly, I think it's $9.7 million specifically for SR 112 to do preservation. And we're looking, it's not a lot of money, but we're looking at that. We're hoping that sticks through the legislative process because we see a lot of needs to do some pavement repairs out there, guardrail repairs, signing, you name it, culverts. We have a lot of bad culverts out there. So certainly slides and some of the geological things are on our mind. So I know I went through that super fast, but we only had a half an hour. So I wanted to, I'll leave it there and let's have some dialogue. So.
Okay, Ben, before I call on you, I'm just looking at the time, and I know that we were scheduled to adjourn at 11:30, and with your permission, I would prefer personally for us to have a more robust dialogue with Steve. And I know Mayor Erickson is here to talk about some raised grants issues, and I don't want to short her either. So I'm asking your permission for our meeting to run over a little bit. And with that, I will call on Ben and then Kate.
Hi, thank you. First of all, I want to say Steve was very generous to grant me a meeting request on Monday, so I got to ask more about the Hood Canal project and how that would affect our local business community and we have a lot of events, of course, in Port Townsend is kind of known for that, and a lot of our economy and town surround it. So it's a big interest for us, but Steve did point out in that conversation that there would be there'd be work in that same time frame on 101. And of course, you take the bridge out, 101 is the other route into town, into the peninsula. And we are down a ferry, and which almost no chance of getting another ferry back online this summer, and especially that time period. So we'll be doing work on 101 on that same, you said a 25-day closure of 101 at the same time we're doing, and I know there's a reroute there, but is that not possible to work this out between those two projects at the exact same time? Because it will really slow traffic down. I know that route exactly. The detour and everything will not be very sufficient to keep the flow going. I mean, maybe today it would be, but not with the added traffic that we're going to see. So anyway, I don't mean to sound grumpy about it, but I just want to make sure that we have some thought going into this.
Yeah, we have looked at that, and the problem we've run into is we get permits for every single one of these fish barrier crossings. The work has to be done between July and September, and otherwise we're putting it off to the following year. So we're in a little bit of a pinch here, and it's a function of just having too much work in one area. The dilemma we have is if I defer it, it makes next year even worse than it already is going to be. So we're looking at a similar level of we won't have the Hood Canal impact next year, but we'll have more impacts on 101 than we do this year. So we've kind of tried to lighten the load on 101, as I mentioned, because of Hood Canal. So we're doing this balancing act.
Okay, it just seems like put all the 101 at once because it's going to be slow anyway. So anyway, that's just my thoughts. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Kate?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Steve. Great to meet you. And I'm really grateful that you're going to be meeting with us in Jefferson County next week. And I do want to say, like, this is a good problem to have. Really grateful for the investment on the peninsula. We know that's much needed. But I'm concerned, and you'll hear more from us on Thursday, so I'll be brief today, but really concerned about the impacts of the bridge closure. And grateful that you talked with tourism folks, but I feel like you didn't get a complete picture, and I want to be able to talk a little bit about some of those impacts, life safety impacts for transfers off the peninsula, huge concern of our chief of our fire district. And then too, just the reality is a lot of our businesses operate in the red all year, and it is the summer months that put them into the black. And August in particular is the most important time for a lot of our businesses. So we'll dig further into this next week, but would just really like to be able to talk about how to spread these impacts out a little bit differently, and also talk about some opportunities for mitigating some of these impacts. So just couldn't help but say in this forum too that it's really profound for the people and businesses who operate here, and so would really like some more consultation as county government with you guys.
Yeah, be happy to. I think one of the challenges we're going to run into is the clock is ticking. I mean, this is super specialty work, and it's part of the reason why we're doing it. This is millwright work, and there's only certain contractors in the country that can do it. And they're not going to show up one weekend, go away, show up another weekend, go away. We won't be able to get them. And this work is so critical to get done. And that's why we're somewhat forced into doing the work as rapidly as we can, which I know amplifies the impacts. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation, but we're super challenged on, we've got to call a date. We've moved it once. I'm willing to move it one more time. If that's what the communities want to do, but at some point we've got to call a date, order the materials, get our contractor on board and locked in so that we can do the work.
Yeah, and I totally appreciate that. I will just say I would love to have a robust conversation about, like Ben and I were saying, like it's almost easier to imagine that it would be easier to be closed for 10 days at a time and spread those impacts over different types of travelers and businesses affected. And, so I defer to your expertise and hope that we can continue this conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, on that point, and I think it's good for everybody to hear this, I've worked on this bridge for over 20 years. Back when we did the east half replacement, we did some other work in advance of that, the approach work, and we did a ton of work with the community. And one of the ideas was exactly what you're talking about. Let's spread the pain. Let's do it during the weekday and weekends. What we learned at that point in time, and I'm not going to say that things were exactly the same then that they are today, but I think they're similar. This is the wrong word, but the weekend trips in many respects are more discretionary than someone that has to commute to their job, has to go to a medical appointment. The goods and services, the truck traffic that, supplies grocery stores and whatnot, that all, for the most part, occurs during the weekdays. And so back then, the feedback we heard loud and clear was, do not disrupt weekly commerce, disrupt the weekends. And so that's kind of the approach we went into this with. Now, if we get a clear signal from all the, the communities that doing it during the weekday is okay, we can make that arrangement. But so far, I've not got that indication that that's going to be okay.
I understand that rationale for the travelers, but for the businesses that are trying to operate here, I think they would disagree. The most important thing for them is having customers. And if people aren't getting here, that is an existential conflict for them.
That is really important conversation. And I'm sure that you'll be able to continue that next Thursday at your meeting. So thank you, Kate, for your questions. We'll go to David and then Nicole.
Oh, Steve, I'm glad to hear about the Gorse decision on the Sam Christopherson. I think that was a good decision on WashDOT's part. Looking forward in compatibility with the Gorse study, and thanks for letting us know.
Hey, you're welcome.
And Nicole?
Thank you for being here today, Steve. I just wanted to touch on something you said, and I want to make sure that I heard it correctly because I might not have heard it correctly. But did you mention in regards to the Hood Canal Bridge closures that you are considering opening for a period of time on Saturday and Sunday to allow for traffic to come through? And
yes.
I'm thinking about this from the perspective of operating a transit agency. So allowing times when maybe our buses could get through to deliver folks to either Kingston or to Paulsbo. So at this point you are considering?
We are, and I'll say what our challenge is much like when to do the work, there is not agreement on when we should flush traffic through, if you will, on a weekend. Is it 8 o'clock to 9 in the morning? Is it, when is the right time? At some point, we're just got to pick a time. The other concern that we have is we won't get as much diversion as we're hoping. And if everybody decides to make their trips anyway, once we make a commitment to open it, whether it's for an hour or 2 hours, the gates will come down at some point because we have to get this work done, right? But yes, we are trying to figure out what is the right frequency and timing for those. What we're looking at is a morning and an evening opening on the weekends. But we have to completely re-rack our contractor schedule to do that, which they're okay with. But we haven't locked it down yet. So that online open house I put in the chat, we will be blasting out information once we've got a decision on that. And my concern is nobody's going to be completely happy with it, but it needs to occur.
Wendy and then Lindsay.
Thanks, Beck. Steve, it's great to anticipate you're here, and so appreciate that you took questions from us last time we met. For those that are with us today, the tribe has been involved as a co-resource manager to know about some of the issues related to the fish barrier passage projects. We're just coming up to speed with the Hood Canal closure that kind of bypassed us as a piece of communication. But as concerning with the Hood Canal and as it relates collectively to all the projects this summer, is there any opportunity to ensure traffic mitigation of having a 2-boat schedule in Port Townsend to help release some of the concern for the Hood Canal Bridge closure?
Sure, good.
And I would also like to mention that the Eagle Creek is that's the one of 6 culverts that Jamestown Slalom Tribe is in discussions as co-resource management. And one of the things that is concerning is the trying to reach the traffic diversion goal in order to make a single lane traffic control procedure viable. And it would be interesting, I think, to understand that there is no detour except for traffic trying to slink their way through tribal lands, through back roads, trying to go in the easterly direction. So basically there is no detour, but I'm hoping that there'll be some consultation with the different local governments, including the hospital district, prior to going on a virtual online open house. And I'm looking forward to seeing what some of those questions might be, because I think the public needs plenty of time to participate in traffic diversion, or this is going to be severely debilitating to the North Olympic Peninsula this summer.
Yeah, well, and that's why we're starting now, is to get the word out and to start that dialogue. We can always make decisions to shift things a little bit, but the challenge is we just have an unprecedented amount of work. And if we don't parse that work out year over year, the construction fatigue will just be too high. So we're in a tough spot here at WashDOT, trying to figure out how do we accomplish all this work and keep goods and services moving. And we're committed to doing that. So yes, I sent you a note last week, by the way. I don't know if you got that. So about
yes, thank you for responding to me. That was for those that are on this meeting, as I tried out the generic WashDOT communication email address to see how quickly someone reads the input, and there is good response time. I can guarantee that. Thank you, Steve.
Welcome.
Thank you. Lindsay.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. And this is such a great, robust discussion. For those of us on the Olympic Peninsula, we live on a rural, isolated peninsula. There was an effort to build the train out here to make Port Townsend what Seattle is today. That couldn't happen because we're in a very remote and mountainous region. And that is something for us to remember as we have these conversations, that resiliency often means sheltering in place, not being able to leave. And I was recently on the straight shot bus that was trying to come back to the Olympic Peninsula when a semi truck hit the Hood Canal Bridge, I was assuming the bridge was open for a sub or something from Bangor until we started doing a 3-point turn at an intersection and heading back toward Poulsbo and eventually on a 5-hour bus ride back to Port Angeles. Fortunately, we recently added bathrooms to that bus. We have power outlets for passengers on that bus. We had built resiliency in a way that we didn't anticipate. And I think that's the way for us to get around these hurdles that are presented to us from maintaining this infrastructure is to think about how we can build resiliency and mitigate the impacts that that maintaining infrastructure has. We in Port Angeles and further west have been basically holding our fingers crossed, hoping that there isn't a flood event that destabilizes the Elwha River Bridge over Highway 101 and causes an emergency closure of that bridge. And an emergency closure, unplanned timing of a bridge closure is, I think, much worse than planning it in advance. Because if we know in advance, people who are coming to visit can make plans, assuming they get that information out there, and the easier that information is to access, the more people who are traveling on vacation, especially summer vacation, can plan to arrive on the peninsula on a Friday, hang out in Port Townsend for the weekend, head over to Olympic National Park during the rest of the week, and get off before the bridge closes again. And so I think communication and mitigation are going to be our strategies here, so that we can deal with planned closures rather than the unplanned closures that come from deferring maintenance. So I know it's not ideal, but it is the perspective that we're in. We're not in a location where we have multiple alternate routes. Fortunately, we have a few, but sometimes, during storm events, we have times when you can't come on or off the peninsula by road. And these events, I think, are an opportunity. These maintenance events are an opportunity for us to really think through kind of that disaster preparedness as well. Let's look at them as a drill for, when we have a big earthquake or when we have a major flood or windstorm or something like that. I remember in Port Angeles, we had a power outage. I think the whole peninsula did. And people were trying to leave Port Angeles to the east, and all the traffic lights were down. And it created a massive congestion because it was one-to-one traffic through those intersections all the way out of East Port Angeles, which honestly is a sprawl zone. And, so people were stuck in traffic for multiple hours during this power outage. And it was a good lesson for us in, the effects of planning. I know WashDOT has been really helpful in thinking through what's going to happen during those 2-week closures on that east side of Port Angeles, where we're effectively going to have, 1-for-1 traffic like that. And the projection is that there's going to be backed up traffic, probably 2/3 of the way to Sequim, probably about 10 miles. WashDOT explored whether we could do a high occupancy vehicle lane, maybe as a way to encourage bus traffic and bus use, as a way to get through 10 miles of congestion. But unfortunately, because of the way that we've done urban, or in this case, suburban planning between Port Angeles and Sequim, there are so many intersections that we couldn't safely do a high occupancy vehicle lane. So that was explored, but we're living with the consequences of kind of suburban sprawl planning between PA and Sequim. And now we don't have a good option for people other than sitting in that long traffic and, hopefully being on the bus and being able to read or do something other than, wait for the car in front of you to move 10 feet. But, I think we're here to think about long-term planning and successful long-term planning. And that means maintenance. And that also means recognizing where we're at and, creating the resiliency to not necessarily be able to move somewhere during certain events and often natural disaster events. Thanks.
Thank you, Lindsay. I really appreciate the conversation this morning, but we do have some time issues. So Ed, you're next.
Yeah, I just want to make sure folks are paying attention to the webinar chat. There's a couple new messages concerning this topic. That's it.
Okay, is there anyone else before I put in my 2 cents? Okay, I will. What I noticed, and I'm sure that Mr. Rourke and everyone noticed, when you get ready for the implementation that's when we're stepping on people's toes, and that's when we hear from them. As Lindsay indicated, the long-term planning is really, really important to get us started, so we're all prepared for these. So I know the Hood Canal Bridge is a big deal. I would call everyone's attention. I think it was 1979. It could have been 1978. The bridge was down, and we drove around 101 if you wanted to get to the peninsula. And I'm not sure how long it was closed at that time, but it was an extensive period of time. So any preventive maintenance you can do now to eliminate a long-term closure, I'm sure is the benefit of the region. The other thing that I heard that was really good news was the Elwha River Bridge contract. Because this group has been looking at that Elwha River Bridge for a long time. Very happy that that's moving forward. The other things that caught my attention, of course, is Gorst, and that going out, you said probably at least 3 biennium. And that's just for the planning phase. We need to be really conscious of these times. And also what I heard is, because I know we had asked you to address these 2 particular projects, but again, the timeframes for SIMDAR is just, that's just, we've been working on that for years and years and years. And also with the Highway 3 bypass, those have been worked on for, I don't want to say decades, but I'm sure Randy knows exactly the date it started. And to hear those continually pushed out, I'm not sure what we do about that, but we want to make sure that they remain on your radar. And we want to make sure you understand the importance of them to our region. I know today we have really focused on the north end, and of course, Simdar Road is there, but we have some real important issues in the south end too. And Gorst, of course, in fact, impacts the Navy significantly. So there's just lots going on. We thank you for your work. We know how hard it is. We know the difficulties of doing the planning and of doing the scheduling, and you can't possibly meet everyone's needs. But we thank you very much for being here and being open to hear our comments. And we also appreciate that you're willing to meet individually with our membership. Is there anyone else that wants to talk about Mr. Rourke's presentation this morning? Seeing none, you're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting. Or if you need to get on with your day, I noticed that our time is moving fast. And so Sarah, make a note next year to allow Steve an hour instead of a half hour.
And you can have me back anytime if we need to dive into any particular topic. So love to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on down our agenda, we are looking for some guidance as we get ready to put forth our UPWP for the next biennium. Sarah, did you want to take this?
Sure. This is the time of year when we start developing the next 2-year UPWP. I talked with the executive committee earlier this month about the possibility of focusing on an overhaul of the regional transportation plan in the next biennium and converting it to something a little simpler, a little more maybe dynamic and integrated with the rest of the work program, like what we tried to do with the Human Services Transportation Plan. The downside of doing that is that that would take up most of our capacity in addition to just, the main core program. And so I presented that to the executive committee, and they liked the idea, but as you saw in your email yesterday, they also wanted to make sure that this isn't like pushing something else off the table that board members think would be important for us to do, maybe more important to do than to revamp the regional transportation plan. And so before we come to you in April with a draft UPWP to take a look at and get ready to finalize, We wanted to get feedback from you today. How does that sound to you all as a board in terms of a sort of a primary focus in this upcoming biennium to refresh, rethink our long-range plan, or is there something else that might be a higher priority? So that's what this discussion is about.
With that, we will open it up. Does anyone have any comments? What I would like to say is, oh, Kate, please.
Sorry, just taking a second to get clicked there. I guess I would just like to put in a plug for, if the plan could, you know, it covers a lot, and I would really love for us to be able to focus somewhere on multimodal transit options across the region, and that is of course included, I know, but you know, just so many of the bottlenecks and the things we ended up talking about as being problematic on the peninsula in particular are related to car congestion. And like, just insofar as the plan can start to flesh out alternatives to cars, which is so often our default when we talk about transportation, I would love for that to be a new focus.
Thank you. I would just like to say this, that when DOT advised us that they would no longer be our lead planning agency, this group has done significant work since then. We completely, we created a new interlocal agreement. We completely updated our bylaws. We created policies, we created procedures, all of these details that had to be done for this group to take over and Kitsap Transit to graciously agree to be our lead planning agency. And then this last year, we redid our human services transportation plan. And we have, we've updated a lot of the way we do business. And I'm a firm believer in any of our plans have to be dynamic and usable plans. Our current regional transportation plan, I find it cumbersome. I don't know exactly how much value it brings to your individual organizations. If we were able to redo our regional transportation plan and make it more dynamic and have demographic information available at your fingertips across the region to be able to show where our strengths and where our weaknesses in our system is. I just think it's an exciting opportunity for us if we get the grant from DOT. If we can get the money for the GIS, I believe we can make a plan, but it will take our energy and it will take the funds that we have to function with. We don't get a lot of money from the state to operate. So we would have to probably forego some other work we may do. However, I do not believe that it would limit us from being the facilitator that we are in many of the emerging issues that come up. So that's my thought. I just think it's kind of the last piece of modernization to our puzzle. But I open that up and am open to any other critical areas that, you know, the group thinks needs to be addressed.
Beck,
please.
I've sent a couple of emails to Thera, but I truly believe in the peninsula that we need a long-term plan for alternate routes off our highways through our community. I know Commissioner Netherlands has been working on that for a lot of years, but when I was the police chief down in DuPont, when that train shut down I-5, if we didn't have an alternate route traffic would have been stalled. And that was because my mayor, my city administrator, and myself worked with Jay Billam to open up the base to get people through. And I know Commissioner Netherland is sitting here, and he went through in 2007 when Mason County became an island with the floodings. And if it wasn't for alternate route planning, this place would have shut down. So Sarah and I sent emails back and forth, but on the peninsula, I've traveled all over it. We need alternate route plans. We need a little bit better communications with our timber companies, our DNR, and when things fall apart, we need to have alternate route plans. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Cliff and then Randy.
Hi, I'm listening to this thinking you guys are, not flush in RTPO funds, I know. So I don't remember if you guys are taking down any SCBG money, but you have the option of, I think it's a 2% takedown up to for planning, which like Island County is doing that for updating their RTP.
We don't get that, Cliff. Island gets to do it because Island County administers STBG funds. PRTPO does not administer ST. We don't have anything we can take down from, and we can't handle federal funding anyhow. But we don't, PRTPO doesn't touch STBG funds.
Well, you may want to explore it more. I don't know. It's my 2 cents.
Okay.
Randy?
Yeah, I just wanted to back up what Commissioner Jackson said. I have gone through all that over the years, and we're going to face that again right now. I didn't say much when Steve Rourke was talking, but that's because he was kind enough to already have had good communication with us here. We're doing the best we can. He's doing the best that he can, and I know he is, and he gave me some advice on how best to try and keep this thing alive. With that being said, we're going to be having a huge impact when they close that bridge. It comes through here. Yeah. And it is devastating for my community when that happens. And we have nowhere else to put them. There is no route. There's no alternate route right now. Belfair is one way in, one way out, basically. And planning for these different ways of looking at it might help through some of that process. It'd be nice to see what the options are. And unless we are planning for it, we won't know what the options are. So I want to thank Commissioner Jackson for bringing that up.
Thank you. So am I hearing you want us yay or nay to move forward with the regional transportation plan? Because I believe both elements that were mentioned both by Commissioner Dean and Commissioner Jackson would be addressed in a regional transportation plan. Okay, we got a thumbs up from Randy. So hearing no negative on it, when you look at the first draft of the UPWP in April, we will feature updating the regional transportation plan. Everyone's saying okay to that? Perfect, perfect, perfect. So with that, we will move on down, and I think this will be a pretty brief on the transportation alternative strategy. Do you want to just summarize this, Sarah?
Yeah, the memo says it all. Well, when in talking with the TAC members, this is not an opportune time to launch a transportation alternatives call for projects right now. And what they requested is that we postpone, maybe fire it up at the end of this year. We'll meet with them in September just to see if things are leveling out. We've got members who have been told by their councils, don't even think about applying for anything right now, and especially not federal money. So this just seems like a good time to cool our heels. We'll meet with them in September and then come to you in October, perhaps with a recommendation to launch starting in late calendar year 2023, launch the next transportation alternatives call for projects.
And just for the benefit of those who are new to our group, the Olympic region or the Olympic or the Peninsula RTPO only gets about $225,000 a year for the transportation alternative funding. So it's not a huge amount of money, and we do try to aggregate that. But that's why it's federal dollars that's very small and expensive to use. So we will look forward to hearing more about that in the fall. So now we have our new agenda item, which has to do with raise grants. And Mr. Stern, I'm going to turn this over to you because you're the one who brought it up.
Well, thank you, Beck. And this might actually be a very brief topic. The raise grant suddenly raised itself suddenly. I'll keep emphasizing that word in the last week or two, a meeting we had with the Bainbridge Island City Council ad hoc. And then we were suddenly approached, at least in Paulsbo, by this group. What are they called? Steve Durant. It has to do with the proposed Atlantic to Pacific multimodal pathway for hiking and bicycling, and then the component, the Cascade down to Sound. This piece is Sound to Olympics and the Pacific Coast. And the deadline was February the 28th, and we were all scrambling and wondering who would be a co-applicant, who would be an applicant, who would even participate, and what the strings were, because it is federal funding. On that note, my colleague Lindsay over in Port Angeles might want to speak to this, and my guest this morning, Mayor Becky Erickson of Paulsbo as well, but perhaps we're already resolved in the course of this meeting. Lindsay?
Yeah, on February 7th, the Port Angeles City Council agreed to be the lead applicant for this raise grant for the Olympic Discovery Trail. We felt like it was really necessary to move that forward fast, even though that was the same day that we were hearing about the deadline. And we had a brief scare afterward that we could only apply for one raise grant. And we were already planning a raise grant application for some projects within the city of Port Angeles. My understanding is that that is resolved and we are moving forward as the lead applicant. But I don't have the direct information as to what resolved with the one raise grant issue thing. Our interim public works director, Mike Healy, would be the source for that if anyone really wants to dig into the details. But at this point, Port Angeles is going forward as the lead applicant, and we welcome everybody else who has any connection with the Olympic Discovery Trail and this vision of the trail going from Bainbridge all the way out to the coast to be part of that application. And of course, there's only one lead applicant because only one entity puts it in through. And for some reason, which I don't understand, PRTPO would not be able to be the lead applicant. That made sense to me because we are the regional entity, but Thera's ready to comment on it. I can see from your face. For whatever reason, PRTPO, it wouldn't have worked. And so we volunteered to play that role at the City of Port Angeles. Thank you all. I hope that works for everybody. We of course didn't have time to check if anyone else was planning on doing that.
Sarah, did you want to comment, and then we'll call on Mayor Erickson?
Yeah, there's a special skill set that goes to administering a federally funded project. And it's no small effort, especially something of this magnitude and the reporting requirements and administering those funds across multiple projects. Yeah, it's somebody's got their work cut out for them.
Yeah, we had already, the RTPO, if everyone remembers, we were unable to accept the federal dollars to do our human services transportation plan. We were fortunate that Kitsap Transit was willing to do that administration for us. So that's why the RPTO is not appropriate to be involved in the application. Mayor Erickson.
Yeah, I just wanted, first of all, thank you for all you do in this organization. I'm happy to be a guest here today. It's been fascinating. I think I'll join more often. Really interesting stuff. Anyway, the City of Paulsbo is bringing forward an application to be a co-applicant on Wednesday night for our City Council to approve. So we will be participatory in this grant. We were a little concerned because we had heard that Port Angeles wasn't going to be a lead now we know that in fact they are going ahead. Thank you, Lindsay, to be that lead applicant. But we're going to join in as a co-applicant, and we have a couple pieces that we'd like to entertain. And we're very familiar with large federal grants, and so you know, Lindsay, we're here to help, but only help. So, but it's an exciting project, and we're happy to participate. Thank you.
Wendy and then Leslie.
I'd like to defer to Leslie. I'm going to speak about what the tribe is going to do this afternoon.
All right, thank you. I'll make this quick. I just want to express how grateful I am to Port Orchard for taking the lead on this, and just want to say that Bainbridge will throw in any support as needed going forward. So we're very grateful that that Port Angeles is taking this lead. So thank you.
Back to you, Wendy.
Thank you. I didn't want to shift gears, but I wanted to let everyone know that the Jamestown Slalom Tribal Council will be reviewing a proposal to become lead agency of a raised grant application for the Hood Canal Salmon Enhancement Group in Mason County, who is ineligible to be a raised grant lead agency, just like how PRTPO can't be one either by statutory requirements. So this project is on the Big Quilcene River, and it is meant to restore a floodplain for salmon, but at the same time rebuild the transportation infrastructure in that area.
Thank you. So it's the only concern, Ed, that you brought forward was just the raised grant specific to this trail system.
Right.
It wasn't other raised grants.
That is
okay.
correct. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we admit your needs this morning. And it sounds like the city of Port Angeles stepped up and that Paulsbo is willing to work with you on that also. So thank you very much. And now we will go to our coordinators report. Thera, do you have just what's in our packet?
Say what's in the packet. There are new funding opportunities popping up every day. I just got something last night, a new federal opportunity. So what I'll try to do is look at these and see if they're even reasonable, and then pass them on. And do want to point out Senator Murray's congressional earmarks are open right now. Just to point that out to you, and February 28th is the closing for that. And so otherwise, because we're running short on time, if there's anything else in here that jumps out at you, please feel free to follow up, or I can answer questions now.
The other thing that I'll just bring up, because Thera and I do this regularly, but just so that you know kind of our parameters, if you're applying for a grant, feel free to contact the PRTPO for a letter of support. We do that for our members. Outside agencies that may ask us for a letter of support, we would bring back to this board before we did such. But we do offer letters of support for our members and basically projects that are in the RTIP. So that's how we kind of make our determination on letters. Ed, do we have anyone in the audience that would be interested in public comment?
Unfortunately, we do not.
We do not. Okay, I will open and close the public comment section. And do we have any member updates today? Anything anyone wants to share? I'm just going to say I saw in our chat a while ago when Mr. Rourke was talking that our new member, Mr. French, I believe offered a nice opportunity for marketing longer stays on the peninsula. I thought that was a great suggestion. Mr. French, thanks for putting it in the chat and offering an opportunity to get people to the peninsula longer during the very busy construction period this year. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Okay, seeing none, we will stand adjourned and we will see everyone again in April.
Thanks, everyone.